So good afternoon, everyone. We are Group 43, and today we will be presenting our PowerPoint on the ethics and societal impact of 3D printing. Now, everyone here is likely familiar with the term 3D printing, and most probably could give a quick definition of what 3D printing is. For our purposes, we will define 3D printing as building a 3D structure from a CAD model, usually done by adding successive layers of material. Now, 3D printing is fun and you can use it as a hobbyist or for recreation, but it has many practical applications as well. For example, on the bottom left, we have a picture of a 3D printed cast. These casts are more lightweight, easier to produce, and allow for better breathability than conventional casts. We can also make mechanical moving parts through 3D printing, such as that screw in the bottom middle, or we can make models using 3D printing, whether they're educational models or prototypes, such as that jet engine in the bottom right. I want to go over a brief timeline of 3D printing to discuss why the 3D printer has found itself at such a crossroads today in terms of ethical usage. In 1974, the first concept of a 3D printer was published in a scientific journal. After this, several companies tinkered with designs, and eventually the first commercial 3D printer appeared in 1986, and it was called the SLA-1, and it can be seen on the right side of the slide there. It's that big clunky cabinet-looking thing. In 1992, the first printer using fused deposition modeling, or FDM, appeared. Now this is a big deal because this FDM technology turned out to be extremely efficient. It's just very good overall, but it was obviously patented at the time by the company that created it. In 2009, however, this patent expired, leaving all companies in 3D printing and all hobbyists able to access this FDM technology and use it as they saw fit. Furthermore, in 2012, design improvements allowed 3D printers to work with a wider range of plastics, including many commercial ones. That means we went from using plastics in 3D printers that were very specific to using plastics such as recycled plastic from bottles or recycled plastic from clothes or many other plastics that you could just find around your household. So it's a combination of having access to a wider range of available plastics and the access to FDM technology that has allowed 3D printers to escalate to the prominence they have today. Now, with this prominence of 3D printing, we start to run into ethical issues, societal issues, such as intellectual property and copyright. We run into issues surrounding the ethics of printing organs or printing guns, unregulated or regulated. And we run into the issue of 3D printing other technical equipment, such as medical equipment or aerospace equipment, equipment that if it is not manufactured to very specific guidelines, can have devastating consequences.
The definition of copyright is the exclusive right given to the creator of a creative work to reproduce this work. Since 3D printing involves both the design and creation of objects, issues can arise due to copyright laws. 3D printing technology allows people to reproduce and duplicate patented objects and designs. Similar to how a paper printer can copy, print, and redistribute a book that is protected under copyright laws, a 3D printer can copy and print physical objects. These copyright infringements are difficult to prove for small-scale productions. It is also difficult to determine which party violated these copyright laws. Is it the creator of the computer-aided design file that used the design of a patented object, or the person who downloads and uses the CAD file to create and distribute the object? Or do both parties equally violate the copyright laws? There are already copyright laws in place for 3D printing technology. These copyright laws will protect the originality of work and the creator's right to reproduce this work. This means that a patented object cannot be reverse engineered to 3D print and redistribute, or 3D printed for personal use. Authors or creators of computer-aided design files can claim moral rights if the design is used and distributed without authorization. These moral rights include the right of attribution, the right to have work published anonymously, and the right to the integrity of the work. An example of a copyright infringement case is happening right now in Italy related to the current COVID-19 pandemic. An Italian-based engineering company, Isanova, was able to reverse engineer a patented medical valve that is needed to connect patients to mechanical ventilators in a hospital in Brescia. Each valve costs thousands of dollars, and due to the high number of cases in Brescia, and the fact that each valve needed to be replaced every 8 hours, the hospital could not afford to keep up with the demand. Isanova was able to print and supply over 100 valves to the hospital at no cost after reverse engineering the design. Isanova has no intention of profiting or sharing the design of the valves. However, they still violated copyright laws by reproducing the valve without authorization. An image of the 3D printed valves is shown on the right side of the slide. As of March 18th, Isanova's 3D printed valves have been used to help keep 10 COVID-19 patients on medical ventilators. The full story can be found at globalnews.ca.
Current Canadian product liability law is based off of two things: liability in contract and fault-based liability under the law of tort. Liability in contract is fairly straightforward. It's when one party in a contract breaks their obligations by either not delivering the product that they said they would or delivering substandard product that somehow causes damages to the other party. Fault-based liability under the law of tort is where usually a consumer is damaged by the product sold to them, and they can claim damages through the courts under the purview of a judge. All parties in the chain of distribution of said product are potentially liable for the claimant to pursue them, and if found even partially liable, the claimant can recover all damages. A major issue with current product liability laws and 3D printing is that oftentimes nowadays the actual 3D printed object itself isn't what's sold to the customer. In fact, what's sold to the customer is the design file to print that object. This causes several issues to occur with Canadian liability law, one of which is that the customer themselves has joined the chain of distribution as the manufacturer of the product. This leads to whether or not the designer should be found responsible if the materials and printers used do not match what they intended to be used. Currently in Canada and most other countries, the product designer is actually very limited in what they can do to protect themselves. One of the few things they can do is provide disclaimers warning buyers that possible faults may occur in the print, which is not due to the actual design file. Currently, to better protect 3D print designers, the European Union is looking to implement legislation that would make the creators of the designs only liable should the product error occur due to an issue with the design file, and not due to manufacturing error. However, in Canada, this largely still remains a gray area that will most likely have to be determined through case law.
Hi everyone, my name is Akshar and I'll be talking about 3D printed weapons, more specifically guns. Now, I'm sure we all know what a gun is, but since this is an issue regarding laws and regulations, it's best to establish a clear definition. According to Merriam-Webster, a gun is a piece of ordnance, usually with a high muzzle velocity and a comparatively flat trajectory. Essentially, it's a device that throws a projectile. Based on that definition, it's safe to say that a 3D printed gun that can fire a projectile with high muzzle velocity should be considered a deadly weapon. Now let's look at a brief history of 3D printed firearms. The Liberator was the first 3D printed plastic firearm. It was a pistol, and it was created by Defense Distributed. This particular pistol was just a single shot or a single use pistol. The company then decided to publish the blueprints for this pistol online practically for free. The file got 100,000 downloads in 2 days from all over the world. Obviously, the US government stepped in and ordered the company to take down the blueprints. The company has since been in an ongoing legal battle with more than 20 US states regarding these issues. Now, this might not seem like a serious issue. After all, it was just a single-shot plastic gun. Well, in November of the same year, a company known as Solid Concepts used a 3D metal printer to create an exact replica of a Browning 1911 pistol. So, let's look at some of the major issues regarding 3D printed guns. There are three main concerns: affordability, portability, and traceability. Now, these might sound like a feature, but clearly in this particular case, they're more like a bug. So, as the technology advances, printer costs will be dropping and have already dropped quite a bit. According to a paper titled Impact of 3D Printing on Global Supply Chains by 2020, a 36% drop in 3D printing costs was estimated from 2012 to 2020. The researchers applied regression analysis to quantify growth of technologies such as LED usage and price drop and RFID usage and price drop. The researchers then used this data and applied it to 3D printing growth curves to estimate the drop. In October of 2014, 1 year after the first 3D printed gun, Defense Distributed started selling pre-orders for a $1,500 compact CNC milling machine, which came with a blueprint for an untraceable AR-15 lower receiver. The device sold out in just 2 days. The company's initial gun was made using a much more expensive printer. However, advances in the technology and decrease in costs meant more people could afford these new printers. There is also the issue of 3D printed parts and accessories. After the 2017 Las Vegas massacre, the US government decided to ban bump stocks, which are an attachment that's used to turn a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic one. There are several designs and blueprints for bump stocks which can be downloaded from the internet right now. It takes approximately 30 hours to make, and the cost to make one can be as little as $20. Blueprints can be easily shared anonymously on the internet and can be downloaded by hundreds of thousands of people in a matter of minutes. This is a particularly alarming issue, since these blueprints give criminals access to cheaper weapons that are untraceable compared to traditional guns. 3D printed guns can cause issues for law enforcement agencies since these weapons and parts don't have serial numbers. It can be extremely difficult to find the source and solve cases where these weapons are used. It's not all bad news, however. Countries have taken steps in the right direction to curb the growth of 3D printed guns and part usage. One of the exceptional cases of this is Australia, which is leading the charge by criminalizing the possession of digital plans to 3D print firearms under the Firearms Act of 1996. Additionally, countries such as Canada, UK, and Germany already had strict rules in place with regards to manufacturing weapons, which cover 3D printed guns. In Canada, a person can be charged with up to 10 years in prison with a minimum mandatory sentence of 3 years for manufacturing any form of ammunition, firearm, restricted or prohibited weapon without a business license. We all know that law-abiding citizens aren't the ones that will attempt to break the law, so it's important to have detection methods in place to monitor the online exchange of blueprints for guns and parts. Now, this particular issue is much harder to deal with. So, the key point to take away from this issue is that as engineers, many of us will go on to design products that greatly benefit society. However, it's important to discuss the potential downsides of projects we work on so we can identify issues that might arise before they get out of hand and prevent them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sureshni, and I'm going to be talking about bioprinting. What is bioprinting? Bioprinting is the process of creating tissue-like structures by adding cells and/or growth factors to biomaterials, which removes the reliance on human or animal transplant. Although the technology is not tested or advanced enough to officially 3D print a whole organ just yet. The idea for bioprinting started in the 1990s after 3D printing via stereolithography was invented and new materials were being introduced. By the late 1990s, the methods for creating an organ had been conceptualized, and in around 1999, the synthetic scaffold of a human bladder was built, using a 3D printer, by scientists at the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine. The scaffold was then coated with the cells of their patient, and the resulting organ worked successfully. In 2002, a miniature kidney capable of functioning as normal was printed, and the first bioprinted blood vessel was created by Organovo, a bioprinting company, in 2010. Bioprinting brings about benefits, such as being an alternative to testing on animals, since the organs themselves can be used. It also removes the need for human donation, living or not. The process of creating organs from scratch can also reduce the rejection rate, as the patient's own cells may be used in the fabrication and the exact geometry can be generated, and the tissue can grow with the patient. The precision that can be achieved with these methods can promote the design of capsules that contain many different drugs with differing release times, which allows patients who would normally need many pills to take one. Medical operations can be difficult to conduct, and having a 3D printed organ can enhance the practice, especially with significantly niche procedures or approaches. There are also sources, such as the Journal of Medical Ethics, that suggest that the illegal and abusive trade of organs might be eliminated. Bioprinting is a technology not without its concerns. The cost of printing is a large barrier to many people. Since this solution is so expensive, the technology may be one that middle-income members may not be able to afford, allowing for the increase in the socioeconomic gap. Since the technology is so new and largely untested, and living cells are used, there is the possibility of introducing cancer into the patient or having the implant migrate. Another issue brought to light is the intellectual ownership of the organ. Is the organ the belonging of the doctors, biotech company, or researchers? And will this create a monopoly on the technology? The existing regulations do not have necessary restrictions for something like bioprinting, so new systems of trials and testing need to be created and implemented.
So in summary, 3D printing presents exciting new opportunities for engineering design and exciting new opportunities for almost any scientific field you can think of. 3D printing, like many scientific advancements, also has the potential to be exploited, and formulation of future 3D printing laws and regulations is likely something that will have to be addressed sooner than later. Thank you for your attention to our presentation.
For further details, please refer to our references. We will now address any questions on WebEx. Once again, thank you for your time.